Go. All right. Hi, everyone. We're going to take a second and wait while people file in. Just give us one moment here. Excellent. While people are still coming into the Zoom room, I have a couple of comments, and so I'll get to those while we're still waiting for people. So yes, hello everyone. Thank you for coming. My name is Matt Kolaski, and I am the Manager of Public Programs here at the Michener. I'm so excited to see all of you here in this Zoom room with us for this Foodie Friday. I hope you're having a beautiful, wonderful, taste-filled Foodie Friday in whatever way you're celebrating today. Like I said, I have a couple of quick announcements and then we'll get right to our very exciting program today. First, as we all get used to gathering in these virtual events, the Michener wants to make sure we are providing you with the best possible experience online. If you have a moment after the event today, we ask that you consider completing this quick virtual program survey, which I'm going to put over in the chat box right now. Next, speaking of online programs, we have several fun, creative, educational events planned, all of which you can enjoy for the comfort of your home. Sweatpants encouraged, showering is optional. Our next, I made that tagline this morning. You're all welcome. The next program is this Wednesday, May 20th at 2 p.m. It's our Art of Stillness program. This is a free program offered every Wednesday by the museum where you can immerse yourself in a single artwork with careful observation. Hosted via Zoom and led by our trained docents, this highly interactive virtual experience is designed to help create a personal connection with you and an art piece. Take this time to relax, contemplate, and share your response and enjoy this great program. This program is free, but you do need to register, and I'm going to put that registration link in the chat right now. The next event we have coming up is Ladies Night in Collage Creations. This is going to take place Friday, May 22nd at 6:30 p.m. Grab your computer, smartphone, or mobile device and join Andrea Thompson, our arts education manager, for a night of fun, relaxing art making as we put a twist on our traditional and very popular Ladies Night Out. Students will use materials they have gathered from their home to create a collage while socializing with other students and the instructor. This is a really fun event. We did a test run a couple of weeks ago with the museum staff. A really fun way to spend your Friday evening. I encourage you all to do that. You can register using this link. Next, we know now that more than ever, the museum and the arts are our window to a wider world. And all of us at the Michener are thrilled to have you support by joining us today. If you like what you see and you're able to do so, I encourage you to make a donation to our annual fund. Every contribution, big or small, makes a huge difference in our ability to continue to present programming as we stay socially distant together. You can make that contribution through this link that I'll post right now. Next, I want to let you know that while the museum is temporarily closed, you can still experience much of the museum from your own home. We've collected all of our online resources for adults, kids, students, and teachers in one place on our website. This is a huge cache of resources, definitely worth dipping into on a rainy afternoon. You can check all of this out at more through this link. All right. Lastly, I wanted to go over a few features of this Zoom webinar, which we are in right now. Because this is a webinar, only myself or the speakers will be live with video and sound. So all of you out there participating as attendees, sit back, relax, you can vacuum, you can be in your pajamas. Just like TV, we can't hear or see any of you. But that doesn't mean you can't interact. If you look at the bottom of your Zoom window, you'll see a chat button. If you click that chat button, panel should pop up on the side of your screen where you can chat with the panelists and other attendees. Later in our program, when we get to the questions from the audience about your gardens, I would suggest putting them in the Q&A function. If you see the button at the bottom of your screen that says Q&A, tap that, it'll open up another button where you can submit your questions. That'll be the best place for you to put your questions, as the chat sometimes runs on and we can lose questions. So you have a question, you can put it in there anytime during the program, but specifically for the experts, the master gardeners, put your question in that chat function, in that Q&A function. Now to welcome our esteemed master gardeners today, instead of politely clapping, I want us to all try out the chat function. And to welcome our guest here, I want you to type in what your favorite fruit is. So I really love blood oranges. So I'm gonna type in blood oranges. So while you're all typing in your favorite fruits, I'm going to turn it over to Kathleen Connolly.
Well, thanks, Matt. I'm Kathleen Connolly. I'm the Master Gardener Coordinator and the Master Watershed Steward Coordinator for Penn State Extension in Bucks County. And I'm joined by 3 Bucks County Master Gardeners tonight, and I'm going to introduce them to you in just a moment. We're here from Penn State Extension, which is the outreach branch of Penn State University. Our job at Penn State Extension is to share or extend university research and science-based information to all the residents of Pennsylvania beyond the university campus. And we do that through continuing education programs and other services out of our Penn State Extension offices, which are in all 67 Pennsylvania counties. In Bucks County, the office is in Doylestown at Route 611 and Olms House Road. The Penn State Master Gardener Volunteer Program is one of those continuing education programs. It's open to all adult residents of Bucks County who have an interest in gardening and giving back to the community. We provide 40 to 50 hours of in-depth horticulture training in exchange for volunteer service. And the Master Gardeners use this education to help residents in the county learn good gardening practices, and they do that in many ways. They give presentations, demonstrations, they staff information booths at events. We maintain demonstration gardens at the Bucks County office where you can come and learn which plants and trees grow best in Bucks County's soils and climate. But all of our Master Gardener services are free for residents of Bucks County. Our garden hotline is another way that the Master Gardeners can assist you with gardening questions and concerns. You can call the garden hotline during gardening season, which is April through October, Monday through Friday, 9 to 12 and 1 to 4 p.m. And Matt will give you the phone number a little later. But you can speak directly to the Master Gardeners during business hours, or you can email us anytime. And today we've got 3 Master Gardeners from our garden hotline staff here to answer your home gardening questions a little later in the program. And I'll introduce them to you. Colleen Michaels became a Master Gardener in 2017 after a career as a chemical engineer. She's now retired. You may have heard of the spotted lanternfly. When the insect first appeared in Bucks County, Colleen led a spotted lanternfly call center out of our Bucks County Extension office, and she also provides spotted lanternfly information sessions to local groups like libraries, schools, municipalities. And Colleen also volunteers at the Ark Wildlife Rehabilitation Center in Chalfont. She loves volunteering on the hotline because as an engineer, she loves to solve problems and help our clients. Karen Graziano has a BS in forestry and an MS in plant and forest pathology. But I do want to say that anyone can join our program, that you don't need these kinds of credentials to get in. We're here for everybody. But Karen has a background at Dow Chemical for 30 years and worked in departments like ag science there. But she retired and she became a Master Gardener in 2018, and she wanted to broaden and deepen her own knowledge of horticulture and also give back to the community. And Karen's also someone who loves to solve problems. Jim Walter is also a retired chemical engineer who spent his career working with agriculture products. And he became a master gardener in 2017. He loves the garden hotline, and he enjoys using his education to help people also solve problems. This is a very enthusiastic group here, and you're in great hands with any questions that you've got for them.
Great. Thank you, Kathleen. It's really exciting to learn about the Master Gardener program in Bucks County and to meet all of you, our great Master Gardeners. Before we get to your questions, we have a very special treat for all of you listening. We were thinking about a way how we can connect these Master Gardeners to our collection at the museum. And I think we're in store for a really great treat. So what we're going to do is we've selected a couple of iconic works from our collection, all featuring fauna, flora, plants from these works. And we're challenging our Master Gardeners to see if they can sleuth out what exactly is going on in these landscapes and other depictions of plants. So I'm going to share my screen real quick here. And we're going to look at our first work here, which is, first, can everyone see the vase with poppies? Panelists, can you see it? Okay, excellent. First, we're going to start with the vase with poppies by Mary Elizabeth Price. A dedicated, energetic artist and promoter of the arts, M. Elizabeth Price was well known as a painter, lecturer, and art teacher. Her most distinctive works were floral paintings executed in a background of gold and silver leaf, imitating the technique of early Italian Renaissance artists. Her floral compositions were often based on flowers from her own garden at her Bucks County home she nicknamed, and this is my favorite part, Pumpkin Seed Cottage, which was located along the Delaware Canal in towpath. Master Gardeners, take a look. What do you see here? Can anyone identify maybe these, or are these poppies? What's going on here?
Yes, so they look like poppies for sure. White poppies are a little more unusual. I don't know if you see them as much as perhaps you did when she painted the painting, or maybe that was her interpretation of her poppies. But you also see the fuchsia plants there, the delphinium, the larkspurs, the blue. Interesting though, it looks like there are some lilies here, which I don't know if the other Master Gardeners would comment, but it's a different blooming season than I think some of the poppies. So I thought that was an interesting thing to note in this artist rendition.
Great. Any other thoughts here? Any thoughts about what some of these other flowers might be?
Well, I guess just one comment about the fuchsia there. It looks like the reddish flowers are probably fuchsia, and that's something that's, I don't think I've ever seen in a floral arrangement before.
It definitely looks like she gathered these from her garden.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting that it's there, but just like kind of looking back overall, I think the combination of different textures and colors and the manner of the flowers and how they present themselves is as important to how this looks as what the identity of the individual flowers are themselves. So this is a great example to follow if you're trying to plan a garden, of how to make a garden look really interesting. Is choosing all these different colors and textures that go together so well, and habits as to upright and tilted over and so forth.
Yeah, it's a very informal presentation, I think, in terms of the arrangement, but it's also interesting that a lot of these flowers are not real hardy in terms of lasting in bouquets. So my guess is that she probably put them together, picked them at various times, put them in a vase, and probably just created it in a fairly quick period of time, because these flowers would not have lasted long in this particular arrangement.
Which is a perfect reason to create a painting out of it, so you can keep it.
It's unique then, yeah.
Yes.
Excellent. That's great. Let's move on to our next work here. And I should say at the end of this, I'm going to be posting all of these Google links where you can look at these deep looks at all of these paintings on our Google Arts page, along with some information that we've developed, learning activities that we developed on our Learn at the Michener website. So you'll be able to explore all of these paintings in much further depth. And I'll post those links after we're done here. The next one, it's the View of the Almhouse by an unknown artist, circa 1900. It's an oil on canvas. One of the first paintings to be gifted to the Michener Art Museum shortly after it opened in 1988 was this landscape scene of the Bucks County Almhouse by an unknown artist. It is rendered in a topographical style typical of America's earliest landscape paintings that depict specific features of a site for local residents. The setting featured is about 10 minutes away from the museum, the junction of Almhouse Road and Route 611 North in Warrenton, Pennsylvania. And I also want to say thank you to my colleagues, Adrienne and Melissa, for pulling together these beautiful descriptions of these artworks. So Master Gardeners, what do we want to look at here?
Matt, can I add, that is the home of the Bucks County Master Gardeners there in the Extension office. We don't do that anymore, but that is actually where our office is. So it's kind of fun to be able to see that.
Yeah.
I love this painting because it's a great documentation of what farms in Bucks County looked like at the turn of the century, which are very different than the farms that we have today. You'll notice that there are a lot of small plots of different vegetables being grown in these farms, in this farm. If you go over, yeah, you can see the different textures of the crops there, and I think he was depicting that these were different vegetables being grown. Mm-hmm. And farmers in Bucks County around the turn of the century were what we call today truck farmers. They would grow vegetables and then cart them down to Philadelphia for sale. And they'd grow a whole variety of things on their farms. They'd grow potatoes and cabbage, rutabagas, asparagus, a whole variety of things that would help feed the population in Philadelphia that couldn't farm down there. If you go over to the left-hand side on the edge there, you can see what looks to be probably cabbage.
Oh, right, hold on. I don't remember, here we go.
Yeah. And cabbage was really popular in Bucks County because we had a lot of German immigrants here that loved cabbage, so it was very popular. You back out a little bit further and go over to the farm cart there on the right-hand side.
This one right here with the...
Yeah, you can see the cart there that's all full of stuff, and that's probably vegetables that the farmer is going to be taking down to Philadelphia. Oops, a little bit further. Yeah. And then if you scroll down a little bit, you'll see a farmer burning some stuff. Okay, oops.
Right here?
Over to the right, just a little bit further, I think as you can see the fire. Oops.
Yeah. There we go.
There you go. And this was very common practice of farmers. They would burn the leftover materials from their farm, and those ashes contain potassium and phosphorus, which are nutrients, and so they'd recycle them back into the soil to help fertilize their crops. The other thing you notice about this farm is not only does it grow plants, but there's a lot of animals. If you can back out a little bit, you can see the variety of animals on this farm. You've got the cows kind of in the road there. You've got the chickens on that right there. Yep. And if you scroll up to the top there, you can see the dancing pigs. There they are. Yeah, the dancing pigs. And again, this was very common of farms where you would grow crops to feed the animals, but then you would recycle the manure from the animals to fertilize your farm, to fertilize your crops. So it was a real cycle that was going on here. Scroll down to the chickens a little bit more, a little talk about them. chickens were very, very important to farms around the turn of the century. Not only did they lay eggs and produce meat, but chickens also eat insects. And one of the problems with having all these animals around is the manure draws flies, and the chickens were used to help keep down the fly population on farms.
Any other comments about the almshouse here before we move on to our next painting?
Only that several of these buildings are still there, so
Yeah.
it's kind of, yeah.
All right, our next painting here is, oh, excuse me, hold on. The Ophelia Rose by Violet Oakley, circa 1918, oil on canvas. Violet Oakley earned a reputation as a mural painter and popular magazine illustrator in the 1890s. She had studied in England and France, and her regard for the English Pre-Raphaelite artists is evident in the Ophelia Rose, a portrait of a character in Shakespeare's play Hamlet. Ophelia is associated with flowers and garden imagery. Yeah, so I know we talked a little bit about this. What type of roses are we thinking these are?
So I did a little research. Obviously, roses are very old plants. So they're very popular way back into the 14th century. So there are a lot of options here that this could be. But I did look at something that I think this might be a maiden blush rose, which was very popular at the turn of the century. Just the way the color is a very sort of fainting pink, and they're kind of an informal arrangement to the petals and sort of simple leaves. So I think that would be my guess, that it's a maiden blush rose, sort of a very old variety. I don't know if the other master gardeners agree or disagree with that.
I think you're right, Karen. It certainly fits the description. You can never quite tell with these paintings because they don't have the detail you'd like to have. But
yeah, and it kind of fits my view of Ophelia too. Just the nature of the painting, kind of maiden blush, really fits the whole mood of the painting.
Feminine. Yep.
So, looking at this little plot that Ophelia has here, is she growing her roses correctly?
Yes, she is.
Yes.
She's got them separated, and there's lots of air space for air to move around them. One of the problems with roses is they're very susceptible to disease. And by separating them out like that, you get better air movement, which will dry up the dew and decrease the potential for disease. So she's put her garden in well.
And then also to note on the bottom, you see it's fairly brown, nothing underneath. That's also very important in roses, that you have what Jim just said about the air circulation. You don't want anything underneath the roses, and you want a lot of, you see the lower part of the stems have been pruned pretty aggressively. So
yeah.
Great, good job, Ophelia.
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna move on to our last art piece here. It's a good one. It is Up the Cuttaloosa by Daniel Garber in 1915. This is an oil on canvas. Daniel Garber was one of the most important painters of the New Hope art colony. His paintings depicted the natural beauty surrounding his home in the Bucks County woods and nearby quarries, Delaware River, and rolling hills. A leading instructor at the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts for over 40 years, Garber also influenced younger generations of painters. Cuttaloosa was Garber's home and studio where he was inspired to create many scenes shown in his work. So I guess the first question we talked about at our practice was, what do we think this big tree in the middle here is?
That's most certainly a sycamore tree.
Yeah, I would agree. It's a sycamore, yeah.
Very, very common in Bucks County in Pennsylvania. They like to grow next to streams, and they're very distinctive because of their white bark. And you can almost see that sycamores also shed some of their bark, and you can almost see the sheddingness coming off of the tree.
Yeah, and it looks like, since it's near a stream, and it looks like willow might be the other. There's quite a few willow.
Yeah,
that
I'm betting that's a black willow underneath it, even
Mhm.
the structure of it and where it's located.
Mm-hmm.
And
And
then that
almost,
other-
what do you guys think of the white flowers? Is that viburnum?
yeah, I think that's a black haw viburnum, which also
I don't
is,
know. I was thinking it could be a rosebay rhododendron.
Oh, I was thinking
Oh,
either
yeah,
rhododendron or, yeah.
that could
Mhm.
be. Yep.
So, I mean, they're quite common in that area. You can see a little bit of the elongated leaves there.
Mhm.
If we knew what time of year the painting was painted, then we'd be able to identify whether it was a viburnum or the rhododendron based on the flowering.
Right.
It's interesting you should say that, Colleen, because I was thinking that this is spring, because
I
it's
was
so
too.
light green.
And that's why I was
and-
thinking it was a viburnum. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so it could be either. If it's spring, it could be either a rhododendron or a viburnum, but it does seem like spring.
Great. Anything else we want to look at before we close out here? And I want to remind people, if you have questions for the Master Gardeners, now's the time to start putting them in that Q&A function while we finish up here. Is there anything else in this painting that
Yeah,
we
there are a
want to
couple of
identify?
things. One is you'll notice that the stream is protected on both sides by a riparian buffer. All those trees and bushes along it help protect it, and they provide shade to the creek, which keeps the water cool. And Bucks County used to have a lot of trout in it, and trout require cool water. So this probably was a cool water stream where trout would survive. Now we don't have many streams in Bucks County that the trout can survive in well.
Jim, yesterday we were talking about this painting and you mentioned about the sycamore, which is
Oh yeah.
Platanus occidentalis, which is the native sycamore to North America. And you mentioned something about the Native Americans using that as a guide.
Yes, sycamore trees were very important for navigation since they like to grow near water and they stand out from other trees. The Indians and the early settlers could identify where water was by finding sycamore trees. And so if you saw a grove, a line of sycamores, that's where you went to get fresh water.
Mhm.
Oh, awesome. Great. Well, thank you, every Master Gardeners, for sleuthing out some of these paintings and for us. I'd be excited for when the museum opens up to have you back in there to help us identify some more of our works in here. But now we've come to the section of our program where we're going to look for questions from our audience. Does anyone, I'm going to look at,
I already answered one, Matt, there, so.
now some of these, like the first question we see is who donated the view of the almshouse to the Michener in 1988? That's a good question. I don't have the specific answer to that, but I'm sure one of my colleagues who's attending might know. Let's see, what are the other questions that we have? Any specific to the gardening that we might have? If not, I have a very specific question that's coming from my garden here in Philadelphia. Olivia, do you want to ask it? Yeah, come here, come on, come on, come on. Is it guest starring my wife, Olivia? Here we go. What's the question for the garden?
My my English peas. They got about 3.5 inches tall, and then something just started munching on them. And they continue to grow, but I haven't been able to identify what it is.
Can you describe what munching on looks like a little bit better? Are they chewing on the leaves?
Yes,
Are they eating the whole
leaves.
plant?
And just the leaves. They're not eating the stems at all.
Okay.
We
So
can't tell if it's an insect or an animal.
A critter.
Yeah.
Oh, so do you go out and see entire leaves missing, or do you see a portion eaten out of a leaf?
Definitely the majority of the leaves are gone. But they're continuing to grow and grow new leaves. I
Do you
don't know.
have grass? Do you have grass? Do you have a lawn, or is it just, are they in pots or little
In beds.
in beds? So it's just the beds and no lawn.
No.
Okay, so it's not bunnies. Might be squirrels.
Maybe.
Yeah.
So why do you
Squirrels or
say not
chipmunks?
bunnies?
Yeah.
Because bunnies would probably need a place to nest, and if there's no grass or brush areas, then they don't have a place to nest.
Bunny
And
in Kensington.
Yeah.
yes, so that's why I was thinking it's probably a hardscape critter, which tends to be squirrels. But squirrels eat a lot of things in my garden, so
I'll keep my eye out.
Yeah.
Try to convince them. Thank you.
Yeah. That was the one that we definitely knew we wanted to ask tonight. All right, so we have a question here from Luis. How do you, my Stephanotis, am I saying that right? Plant did not
Stephanotis.
bloom this year. First time about 4
Stephanotis.
years. Do you have any thoughts why this happened?
We've had some pretty heavy frosts going back into April. And is it an outdoor plant or an indoor plant, I suppose, is the next question.
Let's see here. Luis, is it an outdoor plant? No, it's okay. We'll come back to Luis or question. If you can answer if it's an outdoor or indoor plant, we'll come back to it. All right, we're gonna keep going here. Next one. Oh, I'm sorry, it's an indoor from Luis. It's an indoor Stephanotis. What are your thoughts?
Fertilization, potentially. May need to be repotted, fertilized.
Could
Yeah,
be
I mean-
found, yeah.
So here you're getting a sense of how the hotline works. Like somebody will ask us a question, and then we probably have 4 or 5 questions then because it's like a little detective work. So we would ask how old the plant is, how long it's been in the same location, have you moved it into a different location, is your watering regime the same? So those are the kind of things we would ask. And certainly if Louise wants to answer some of those questions, we can continue seeing if we can detect out the answer here. So
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, I'm going to be posting the hotline number and information right towards the end here for us. Next question. I go rhododendrons in my Seattle garden. A laurel has grown up next to one, crowding it. Should I remove it?
typically, yes.
Yes.
It depends on which you like better. If you like the rhododendron and it blooms well and it's really loving that location, and the laurel is you're not as big of a fan of it, and you really like to make the rhododendron just really happy and have more space, then I would say, yeah, remove it and maybe transplant it to somewhere where it can have its own space. And laurels and rhododendrons are kind of in the same family, and
Yep.
so they would probably like similar types of environments. So you could move the laurel to a place that the rhododendron likes too. So, but yeah, I would think if you like the rhododendron, move the laurel and let the rhododendron have as much space as it wants.
They will compete for moisture and nutrients because they do feed on pretty much the same thing. So moving the laurel is going to help the rhododendron grow better.
Right.
Some other questions here. Let me see here. What is the best way to prevent deer from eating hydrangeas without hurting them?
Oh boy.
Wow.
Well, there's always the physical barrier. You can put up something around your hydrangea to protect it. There are deer repellents. The problem with deer repellents is they wash off in the rain, so you have to reapply them every time it rains, which can become cumbersome. Unfortunately, deer can be very persistent, though. So it's
So
a tough
there are some other devices that during non-freezing temperatures you can use. So those mechanical types of devices that are activated when a critter comes nearby, it will activate when you come by too if you don't turn it off. So which will spray a jet of water. And those can be effective in landscapes around your house where you don't want to have to put up physical barriers.
Oh.
Many of the gardens that I've worked in use the high-pitched frequency deer repellents. So they have them, they look like landscape lights, and they emit this very high-pitched sound that if you're over 30 years old, you can't hear. But if you're under 30 years old, you can hear it, which is something that I learned working in gardens. But so these are actually pretty effective. They're pretty expensive, but they do work very well. And so you can put them up in your gardens as well.
Good for deer and teenagers, right?
Yes,
If
exactly.
they're messing with your plants, it'll keep them away too.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Suggestions as to best indoor herbs to grow.
Well, mint is a good one. You can use it in a lot of different things. Basil, any of the really tender plants are great house plants because they're easily maintained in a very lush sense inside. I mean, we love to put basil outside, but it also grows very quickly, gets heat stress, and so that basil is a great plant to have inside. Mint, because mint goes crazy in gardens, so it's nice to have it in potted plants in your house.
So it's contained. Yeah.
And you can use it in your tea and smoothies and everything. So, any other thoughts, you guys?
Thyme is an excellent house plant.
Thyme, parsley.
Yeah. Great. Looking at some of the other questions here. Your favorite shade plants that are deer resistant? Oh, wow. That's a tough one.
Ooh. Okay,
So,
I'm going to give you one that I really enjoy, but it's not native to Pennsylvania. It's a group called Mahonia. They're from the Pacific Northwest. Deer don't touch them at all. They're evergreen and they bloom in the spring. You get varieties that have yellow blooms or white blooms, and I love them.
So celandine poppy, which is native, is also pretty deer resistant, and it's definitely good for shade gardens. So that might be worth looking into too.
If you can get the ferns past the fiddlehead stage, ferns, there are several ferns that do very well in shade gardens that are, yeah, I mean, the deer do like the fiddleheads, but if you can get them past that, then they're a nice plant to have in your shade garden too. And that's one of my favorites. Also, the annual caladiums are very nice too. And so it depends on whether you want a perennial or annual, but there are several annuals that you can plant in the shade that are pretty deer resistant.
And of course, daffodils are deer resistant. You know, if you just want something for a period of time until other things fill in, daffodils do a great job and deer don't touch them.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Let's see here. I have a camellia with some black spot. Should I cut it back to the ground or prune it more lightly?
Kind of hard to tell until you see how much black spot and how big the plant is. So that's a tough
Yeah,
one.
so is it a mature, if it's a mature plant, like how size, maybe you can ask the size of the plant, how long it's been there.
So that,
How old is this plant?
that person could also email us a photograph of it,
Photograph would be really helpful.
and we can further diagnose it by taking a look at it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Let's see here. We're going to move on real quick. What is the easiest way to tell if my vegetable garden needs to be watered, hopefully before any plants are affected by a lack of water? Well, that's a good question.
Mm-hmm. Anybody want to take a shot? I mean, I would say consistent watering is your best friend. So sometimes people don't water because it's rained or They water too much again if it's rain. So it's really hard if we have a very wet spring like this and it continues in the summer. It's very challenging to know when to water. But I would say always water in the morning, always water at the root level. Make sure you give a thorough watering. So less frequent thorough waterings are better than very light waterings. So just a couple tips. I don't know if you guys have any other thoughts on that. But.
An old golf course trick. If you can take a screwdriver and not stick it and get it to go into the ground at 6 inches, just pushing it into the ground, then you've got enough water. If you can't push it into the ground 6 inches, you need to water.
And so generally speaking, we're looking for what, about an inch of rain per week?
Yes.
Equivalent,
Yeah.
or watering the equivalent amount.
Right, right. But plants, I mean, it's best, especially in the spring, not to allow your plants to go under heat or water stress. So especially when you first establish your garden, consistent watering is the best thing at the root level. Because once they do have the stress from heat and lack of water, then it makes it even harder for them to recover. So.
And they become susceptible to disease.
Right. So it's really a question of, in the spring, watering is actually a lot more important than as we get to midsummer. Then it's just a kind of a consistent watering, again, at the root level. It's best also in the morning, don't get the leaves wet when you're watering.
And mulching can help hold some of the moisture in the soil as well.
Mm-hmm.
So for mulching of some plants could be.
And mulching it means 3 or 4 inches of a mulch. So if you're going to I use sterilized straw, and that's been recommended in a lot of gardens lately. I think even Penn State had a recent article about best mulches to use. And the mistake that some gardeners do is they only put a very half an inch layer of mulch. Especially tomatoes, you want a good 3 or 4 inches of mulch to make sure you hold the water in the soil, but also reduce the chance that things that are bad in the soil can splash up on the tomato plants.
Any way to know when you're overwatering your garden?
The standard technique is if you take a handful of soil and you squeeze it and water comes out, it's too wet.
And if the leaves, I think a lot of the plants, if the edges of the leaves start to turn brown, sometimes that's a good indication that you're overwatering. It's, it's a hard, it depends on how much sun you get during the day. And, there's, again, we want to ask you 4 more questions when you ask us once.
A question from Ken. I lost some impatience to frost about a week ago. When is it safe to plant annuals in central bucks to avoid frost?
Okay.
Oh, you're on mute, Colleen.
I said our general frost-free date is around usually May 10th to 15th. We've had a few surprising frosts this year. So we've been that extra 10%, I think, beyond the May 10th to 15th. But typically that's the time that we'd look for. So I think once you approach that time, you need to look for a long-term weather forecast to make sure there are no freezing temperatures.
But and also impatiens like a warm night also. They don't like cool nights.
They don't like cool nights.
Right.
So waiting till you plant impatiens, probably till beginning of June, is always a safe bet.
Yeah.
What are impatiens?
Let's see. Can someone find a picture of one and share their screen?
Are they plants?
They're plants. They're annual plants. Yeah, they're annual plants. So
obviously I am not a master gardener. Oh, that's interesting. All right, let's see here. Other questions. Are ferns resistant to deer?
Yes.
Yeah. Again,
except for hay-scented fern, right? So
hay-scented,
So that's
the hay-scented fern's a weed.
yeah.
Yeah, hay-scented they are often in the woodlands. But anything you buy at a garden center, most of those ferns are deer resistant.
Yep, cinnamon
Again,
fern.
some of them will
and
nibble on the
Christmas fern.
fiddleheads, yeah.
Yeah.
but- mhm.
Great, here. Just looking through more of these.
Deer seem
questions.
to dislike texture.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah.
So if you think about the texture of some of those ferns you were talking about, and the mahonia that Jim was talking about, which actually has some little thorns on the leaves, anything like that is something that deer would leave until last if they had it.
Mhm. Right.
All right, I have a question from Jean here. I have a very large bay leaf tree, and keeping it outdoors in the summers has caused it to be covered with smoothie mold. How to get rid of this blackish mold and bring plant back to its original beautiful state? Several of those words I'm not familiar with, but maybe you can help.
I think it was sooty mold. S-O-O-T.
Oh, yeah, yes.
Well, sooty mold, I mean, that's usually a situation where there's too much moisture. And so perhaps finding a drier, sunnier location so that the plant has more air and doesn't have a lot of, I guess, damp, cool environment. And sooty mold will thrive on that. It sounds like you bring it inside in the winter, obviously. So there are some, I guess, I'm not sure if neem oil, or there are some organic sprays that you can use on plants that are edible, things like neem oil or the organic insecticidal soap. And well, this would be a fungicidal soap, but you can spray the undersides of the leaves and that would also help. But I think mostly sooty mold and those kind of molds, they're a symptom of the environment that the plant's in. And so finding a drier location for it, and maybe that might help also. Taking the leaves, I was just going to say, and taking the leaves that are affected off the plant.
Right. I think insecticidal soap is what I would try first, because that will help also remove some of that sooty mold off of the surfaces.
Right.
All right, question from Anne. What is the favorite flowering shade plants for pots?
Ooh. I would guess impatiens is probably the favorite. It's probably the biggest seller shade plant.
Well, begonias, some of the begonias are beautiful. Some of the lacewing begonias, there's so many varieties of begonias now, Rex begonia. They're absolutely beautiful in the shade and they have lovely flowers and they're a little bit different than the impatiens. I tend to go to more different flowers but impatiens probably is the most popular one and the most easy to grow.
Fuchsia also can be really interesting in
Fuchsias,
a pot.
yeah.
True. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Another question from Meredith. We have lots of rabbits. How do I protect my garden, especially flower seedlings? Oh, no,
Chicken
that's
wire.
not a good look.
Yeah, a fence.
Chicken wire, yeah.
Yeah.
So the good thing is that the bunnies don't jump really high. So if you can,
So you don't have to make it too hard.
you don't have to make it too high. And they sell, I mean, it's very easy to put up. They sell the very fine wire that you probably only 2 feet high and wrap that around the bed, at least until the flowers are big enough and then they won't bother them. So, but that's the only solution that I've come up with is fence.
Yeah, there are repellents that we talked about before that you can apply, but they have to be continuously reapplied. And if it rains and you don't get out soon enough, then physical barriers are more reliable.
Yeah, and they're not as hard to protect against as deer.
As deer.
Right. They can't reach over as easily.
Right.
Right. And they can't jump over as easily.
More questions from Meredith. Let's see. Is it true that if you increase the lime in soil, it makes it more alkaline? And do hydrangeas turn blue if you do? Interesting.
Okay, I believe that the color of hydrangeas is more related to the availability of zinc than it is to the pH of the soil. So pH of the soil can influence the availability of zinc, but the zinc content is really what changes the hydrangeas from blue to pink. And I can't remember what the order is, if it's high zinc that's blue and low zinc that's pink, but it's the zinc ion that changes.
Yeah, and adding lime does make, it increases the alkalinity of the soil.
Yep.
So it increases the pH. So if you have acidic, so that's a plug for the Penn State soil test that you can get through the Master Gardener hotline. You can test your soil and you'll understand all sorts of things like organic matter, pH of the soil, the different availability of micronutrients and minerals in the soil. So it's really handy if you're going to be adding lime or any kind of fertilizer, that you know the pH of the soil that you're dealing with, and that'll allow you to add the right nutrients to get the color that you'd like also. So.
Yeah, I don't think you ever want to add lime unless you know what your pH is and what your target is for the plant that you want to grow there.
Right.
We've got time for a couple more questions here. Ken wants to know how to best take care of gardenias, or is there a similar great smelling indoor plant?
Jasmine.
There you go.
Yeah, jasmine would be, I've never grown jasmine. Have you grown
Gardenias
jasmine?
are very difficult. They like a lot of humidity. And if they don't get exactly what they want, they're not going to be very cooperative. So in terms of easy houseplants, that would be on the bottom of the list. Jasmine might be a little less demanding, but it does smell amazing.
Yeah, I know back in the day, my mother would take the gardenia in and out of the house. You know, she'd bring it out in the summer and back in the house, and it always did really well in the summer when it was out in the humidity.
So now that we have just a couple more minutes left, I wanted to make sure I asked each of the Master Gardeners what you're excited about in your gardens or your planting worlds right now. What are the things that's got you the most excited and the most hopeful looking forward to this planting season? And while they're answering this question, I'm going to put the info for the hotline in the chat again to make sure that we all can access that and get that there. So Colleen, what are you excited about in your planting world right now?
So actually this year I've been working really hard to spread around a little bit more of a native ginger plant. And it has finally taken hold and come back quite strong. It has had some beautiful little flowers, which you have to look really hard to see, but they're very unusual looking and very striking. So I've never been able to see them before. So this is my first year of ever seeing these flowers on my ginger plants.
And that is a great ground cover, right? For both sun and shade. So it's a great ground cover, yeah.
And deer resistant.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Perfect. Karen, what about you?
Well, I've started to explore the world of hardy geraniums. So I am looking at different varieties and trying to figure out what works best on the site that I have. And also I'm pairing that with anemones this year. And anemones are just a really cool plant because they flower very late in the summer. So they extend your blooming season. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how those two do in my garden.
Great. Kathleen, do you have something that you want to share?
Yeah, I am very focused on using native plants in my gardens. And one of the things that's pretty exciting is that I'm taking little sections and removing the invasive species in those sections, and then watching the native plants return when they're not being crowded out by the invasives. So that's, just seeing that and seeing a jack in the pulpit, which is, you know, a
Oh, yeah.
native flower pop up out of a place where a multiflora rose used to be, is really rewarding.
Great. That's awesome. And Jim, what about you?
My wife and I just put in a pollinator garden in our back 40, which we had lots of fun picking out which plants to put in there, and we'll see how they survive. And we've already been visited by deer a few times, but hopefully we will succeed in drawing some pollinators in.
That's great.
Cool.
Panelists, thank you so much. Master Gardeners, I really appreciate your time and your energy here. Thank you to Kathleen and everyone at the Penn State Extension Master Gardener Program, Bucks County, for joining us. And thank you everyone, attendees, for chiming in tonight, listening in, learning more about the artwork at the Michener and about your gardens. Again, if we didn't get to your question tonight, I'm really sorry, but know that you'll probably get a much more thorough answer if you chime into their hotline or give them an email. And again, all of that information is in the chat over here. You'll also be getting all of this information again with a follow-up email after this event. Again, thank you everyone. I really appreciate all of your time, and enjoy the rest of your Foodie Friday, okay? Bye everyone.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks,
Bye.
Matt.
Bye.